Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Horse's Mouth Live. My name is Ellen Rogin, and as always, I have great guests to share incredible information with you to help you in every area of your life, especially your business. And today, we're talking about one of my absolute favorite topics, which is mindfulness, but with a really interesting take on how to bring mindfulness into your client relationships. And we have a really special guest today, Leisa Peterson, who I'll give you her formal introduction in a second. But I love the way that we met. It was a beautiful LinkedIn connection, and not one of those creepy ones where someone links in with you and then immediately tries to sell you something. We both got called out in a really nice way by Bob Berg, who's been on this show before, and Leisa reached out, and there were so many synergies between our business. I feel like she's a new friend, even though we've only known each other a couple of weeks. And as soon as I met Leisa, I'm like, oh, you have to come on Horse's Mouth Live. So, Leisa, before I let you actually even speak and share your wisdom, I want to give the audience more detail about your background because it's so pertinent to our advisor audience. So, Leisa Peterson is a CFP, was practicing for quite a while, and is now on her mission to help 1 million people elevate their financial consciousness. I love that, by realizing their true value and thriving financially. She's a business growth strategist, a money coach, and a mindset teacher. So Leisa hosts also the Mindful Millionaire podcast, as well as virtual workshops and life changing and transforming retreats. She's had over 17 years of coaching and financial advisory experience. She teaches coaches, financial advisors, entrepreneurs all over the world to get clients and grow their businesses to be more profitable. And she does this through online training, through coaching in her communities. And this is so interesting to me. She was, it all is, but noted in Forbes as one of the 10 women driving growth in wealth management and investing. She's appeared all over the place. And lucky for us, she's appearing on Horse's Mouth Live today. So welcome, Leisa.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Ellen, and I share everything that you said. It's such a fun connection.
Yeah, so I love this idea that you have, as I had or have, really direct experience as a financial advisor, bringing in meditation and mindfulness into your practice then and clearly your business now. So, how do you think when you were an advisor that meditation really impacted your financial advisory practice?
So by the time I became a financial advisor, I had been meditating about 10 years. And so it was already second nature to me, but I just didn't know how it was going to show up in the business that I was doing. And one of the things that quickly became apparent and really powerful is those years of meditating had caused me to be really curious about people and about how they engaged with money, what their relationship was with money. And so I found myself asking more questions than what I was receiving in my training, both, in my advisory position as well as getting the CFP training. I could see that there were things that were missing that I wanted to ask the clients more about. And that changed things. I think the more we look at our own thoughts and our own actions and become more mindful, the more we also become aware of how people are struggling, and especially people struggle a lot with money. It's not always what they say. A lot of times it's what's happening or their actions or their behaviors or, the not doing that tells us more than what they tell us. So, yeah.
So talk a little bit more about how meditation or your mindfulness practice connected with you being more aware of what was going on for the client, that you were asking other questions. Maybe bridge that gap for us a little bit about how one led to you being more effective with the other.
Yeah, it was really interesting to me because I started studying like George Kinder, who's become a friend, and I started looking at books because I saw these openings, but I didn't know what to do about it. And what I started asking my clients is if they'd meet me for coffee or, not in my office, but somewhere else out in nature, go on a walk. And I said, would you talk to me about your relationship with money? And that was the game changer for me. I mean, like life changing conversations, not just for what I was hearing them say, but what ended up happening for the people who I started interviewing. And sometimes it would be 1 hour. Sometimes it would turn into like 5 or 6 hours. And I was so curious. They'd be like, can we meet again? Can we meet again? And the conversation was nobody has ever, ever, ever asked me these questions before. And they're opening things and discoveries in myself that I didn't even know about and that I've been resisting. On the good side, people got more engaged in thinking about their money and taking better care of it. On the depends on how you want to kind of look at this, there were people that actually realized through those questions that they were not in a good, healthy relationship, and they like ended up divorcing a partner. Another person quit their job and started a company. Like everyone began to make pretty big changes as a result of me just asking these questions, even though I hadn't been trained to do it. I just was curious.
So in addition to asking, so tell me about your relationship with money, which I would imagine most people would know what you meant, and some people might go, what do you mean? But what are some other questions like that that helped elicit your understanding of them and their own self-discovery?
I would ask them things like what had happened with money growing up. What was it, the tone of money in their home? How did their parents think about money? What were some of the messages they had received? And how did they affect them? And how are they affecting them in their lives now? I would just let them talk about the past. And I would also encourage them to journal about these questions that I was asking. So it was kind of partly journaling, and they would send me their notes, and then partly just what came up. And I just got curious. So they'd say one thing and I'd be like, hey, could you tell me more about that? And then the next thing you know, they're like, where's the tissue? I need to cry, because I've never, ever, ever allowed myself to think about this stuff before. And it was really just naturally healing. Like I didn't need to be a therapist. I didn't need to be anything but a compassionate listener. I didn't have to comment. I didn't have to tell them what they were going to do differently. Just the space of them feeling comfortable sharing was all it took.
I think that's really an important point about this, not feeling like you had to make it better for them. And one of our guests that we had on about 6 months ago said one of the hardest things for advisors is that they are advisors, that they don't know when to shut up, that they always feel like they have to be advising. So for the person out there listening who's like, okay, that's fine and good, Leisa, but I'm in business. I gotta, really build. How did this impact your business besides, I could see someone going, that's great. I could see it building a deeper relationship, but I don't have time for that. And what I really need to do is get in and solve their financial issues or help them meet their goals. So how did that work into actually you being successful?
Totally. It wasn't overnight. I mean, it's just like any relationship development process. It takes time. But what I worked with a lot of women who did not feel comfortable about the money that they had built, or, there were issues in their relationships where maybe their husband took care of all the money, or they took care of all of it. And there were just a lot of things that they wanted to better understand. And what I found is in asking those questions, I started to see the things that they were holding themselves back with. So what I call it now is like the underlying issue that was holding them back. And just by them noticing that, they were able to start making changes. But not only that, one example would be, as a financial planner, we do a lot of estimates, right? And trying to figure out what does the future going to look like based on the savings rate or on your withdrawal rate. And sometimes what you're telling them is not in alignment with like reality, and there's a disconnect there. It's like, well, I'm doing this, but I should be doing that. And as an advisor, it's really frustrating because you want to help them to be able to do the thing that is going to set them up for success. Well, what I found is if they don't understand the underlying issue, then they're going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And it's always going to feel like a struggle. And even if it's something as simple as, hey, now that we've talked about this, I noticed that you're really holding on to something that probably could be uncovered and worked on. Like it's not like you're going to be the therapist, but you may say to them, there are people that can help you with this, that could make it easier so that you're able to achieve your goals and you're not feeling so much frustration. Like at least you can give them resources of where to go next.
Talk a little bit about how your own personal practice impacted your success in business.
So my own personal meditation practice
Yeah,
or
you mentioned to me right before we went live, and I didn't ask more questions about this on purpose, that like you spent, okay, so this is what you said to me, so you're going to have to
yeah.
explain this. 3 months in my
Okay.
closet, and then you did better, you were working less and made more money than you had before. So
Yeah.
unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah. So this is before I made the transition. I was a mortgage underwriter and banker for several years, and then I became the financial advisor and CFP. And so in the time that I was a mortgage banker, I was at the top echelons. So very, very busy. I was working on high net worth home purchases in Lake Tahoe area. Like my average purchase was about $2 million home. And so just to give you perspective, and a lot of my job was processing loans and also getting new clients. And what I found was that when I decided to make this commitment to do this 3-month retreat, which was a counting mantra retreat, and the reason the closet is that was the only way that my 1-year-old could not find me in that time that I was doing the retreat. Like we do weird things when we're super spiritually focused, but I understand that. So I'm in the closet meditating, and I couldn't take 3 months off of my job. So I had to figure out, how can I do the bare minimum in my work and still meet the obligations of this mindfulness retreat? And what was amazing to me is I ended up finding a way to literally focus on work, maybe an hour a day. And in that time, I booked more new clients and closed more deals than ever before. And it showed me just how much what we do is busy work, and how other people can do things for us that we probably do for ourselves right now. And that when we're super intentional, like if we were, one way mindfulness works is let's say you've got a big meeting coming up, and normally you'd just be doing logical preparation for how you're going to, help a client. But instead, you're spending 20 minutes setting intention and figuring out, like, who is this person? Why are they coming to me? How am I both going to best serve them with all the things that I know and who I am? And many times we know it's about the character and the values that we have way more than anything else. So you're tuning into that stuff. So by the time you meet with the client, they feel how much you care about them. They feel how much connected or want to connect with them. And that changes the dynamics of the relationship right away and sets things on a different tone than if you had just done all the mental kind of thinking through how you're going to help somebody. So that would be one practical way that I think helped me, and it continues to help me in the business that I'm building.
Let's talk more about intention, because that's something that I practice before every guest that comes on this show. We talk about what our intention is for the show. And it's not something I've ever shared with the audience before, that's actually deliberately happening. So share a bit more, Leisa, about how practically we can use intention in whether it's our thinking about the year ahead now that we're at the beginning of the year, or as you said before, with clients like that, like maybe pull back the curtain a little bit about how you use that, or how you coach your clients to use intention as a deliberate practice.
So first of all, there's a lot of different ways that people think about meditation. And I think it's helpful to note that I've been meditating for 21 years on a daily basis. And I use meditation as an intention setting process to start my day. So that's how I see it. I see the whole thing that way, where I'm rehearsing. Part of the practice is to rehearse what's going to be happening? Who am I showing up as? How am I going to be in service of the people who most need that service? How am I going to be for my family? So it's not that we have all the answers and that we just say, this is my intention. What I think is the next step beyond saying, I want to have loving relationships. I want to have clients who appreciate the work that I do and feel the impact that we're making together in their lives and their families' lives. Like there's that. But what I think we do is we take it to the next step, which is like visualizing, feeling it, understanding the feeling that we want to approach each and every day with, to the point where when we show up in the presence of a client nowadays on Zoom, let's say, they're like, wow, this person is here for me. Like they really, really care about me. And that didn't just happen when the Zoom camera came on us. That happened in your morning meditation when you thought about, well, today I'm meeting with Joe and then I've got, Cheryl later today. And like, what do I want to make sure that they leave that conversation with? And you've already rehearsed it. It's just a detail of being present to them on the call, and you know where it's going to take you. And it's just such a different way of living.
I love that. I also love that you, even in your example with Joe and Cheryl, it's like, what do they take away from the meeting? Because we certainly have intentions, and I think it's fine to have goals and intentions for yourself. And what I've seen is drives those to be even more impactful and successful and manifest and show up more quickly is when you include really being of service or what you want that other person to do. You didn't say when I asked you your intention for this show, well, I hope everybody goes out and buys my book or they all sign up and I'm their coaching client. Yes, if it's the right person and it serves them, of course, that's a byproduct. But all your intention was that you shared was really what they would get out of this. So I suspect you just do that naturally. Is like, how am I going to be of service? But talk to us a little bit about that balance. Like, how do you be of service to someone else and still have your own needs met in that visualization process?
Yeah, I don't think it's easy. And I know for a fact that this wasn't the person that I was even when I was a financial advisor. Like I have learned how to be the person who is of service to people. I have, and people walk away feeling that experience when they work with me. I think that this is a place where there's big openings in the financial services industry, having left it and then kind of figured out my own path, in that there is not necessarily a super high bar overall. So you think about new clients coming to you, they may not know, what it's going to be like to work with you. And I think that when we're more in our awareness of who we are, what our values are, how we serve other people, which has a lot to do with what happens when we have a regular daily meditation practice. Like we just start to focus more on other people and less on our problems and how those are going to get solved. And there is a bit of leap of faith at first that this is going to be far more successful for me in the long run, even if the short run might not look clean. Because here's one thing that comes up, Ellen. When we start becoming more mindful and caring about people, there are likely people in our Rolodex or in our, portfolio clients that actually aren't ready for that. Like they're not ready for us to care about them that much. And those are problem clients. Like they're all about me, me, me. And it's funny, how we do one thing is how we do everything. So if we're focused on ourselves and self-serving, we're going to attract clients that are self-serving. If we're focused on service, it's funny, we're going to attract clients who want to make sure that we're getting what we need out of the arrangement. They're going to be so appreciative of working with us. They're going to ask us, gosh, how do you make money? I want to make sure you're taken care of. Like that's the kind of questions that people start to ask when we're not trying to focus on how much we're going to make off of them. It's absolutely bizarre because it's the opposite probably of what many of us expect.
It's also the opposite of how many advisors are trained, even today. So for someone listening who's like, oh, I've tried meditation, it doesn't work for me, or it's too hard, or I couldn't spend I mean, I won't leave my house in the morning. I won't get really, start my day until I've had at least 20 minutes of meditation. But I also have had a really long-term meditation practice, and I know how important it is to me. I also know there's lots of ways to do this, right? There's
Yeah.
lots of ways people can incorporate that. So what do you tell people or your clients or whoever you're really coaching and inspiring to start to have a meditation or mindfulness practice?
Yeah, the first thing I say is it could take years to get something in place that you feel confident about. So if you know that this isn't going to be like many other things in life, that you just try it a few times and then you're good to go, it's something that it loses the benefits if you don't do it on a daily basis. And just like anything, inertia to momentum, it takes a while to get out of inertia when we begin meditation. Some of the ways that we can overcome that steep curve of resistance that comes up is breath work. So, one of the reasons why meditation is so hard for people when you're starting out is the mind is so busy that you really don't ever settle it. And the cool thing about breath work, so let's say you take 3 to 5 minutes to focus on breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. It can be fast, it could be slow, whatever feels good. By the time you're done with that few minutes of breath work, your mind and all that activity is going to have settled down enough so that you can have more spaciousness in your thoughts. If you don't do that, meditation is going to be a lot harder for you. It's probably going to take longer. The other thing I recommend is, while apps are helpful and they're great tools, that isn't the final destination. You want to use an app to get you to a point where you're able to just sit. Let's say you're waiting in line at Subway for your sandwich, or you're on a walk. You want to get up to a place where you're okay with silence and you're okay with not having the busy mind telling you what to do constantly. And that takes time. But until you reach that place of silence and quietness, you're not going to have the main portion of your dinner. It's kind of like you've got appetizer with the breath work, and then you've got this experience that you're looking for. And many times we don't get that for the first couple months of trying it, which is just calm, restful. I'm just focusing on my breath. I'm just being in the present moment. Like, that kind of stuff is advanced. And I will also just say, keeping your mind on quietness, or on a flower, or on the sky for more than 15 seconds is actually very advanced work. Like, people don't realize that keeping your mind on like one single focused object for a couple of minutes could take somebody 10 years to develop. And people don't realize that that's what's happening behind the scenes. Like, we're not abnormal, we're normal. And it takes time, just like learning how to run a marathon. Like, it's going to take time to do it in the way that to experience kind of the benefits that we all think are out there. On the way, we realize that it's actually very beneficial and we feel good, but the results are very, very subtle. And that's, I think, why people give up too soon.
Yeah, and there's research studies have shown that even 4 to 6 weeks of a deliberate practice actually changes your brain. Our brains are malleable, and that it lowers that, they call it the default mode network, but that's our mind wandering. And as things slow down, that's when you can have kind of you can be more present with other people, first of all, but that's where some of these inspired thoughts really come from. And like, oh, I should call so-and-so. And then you actually take action on it. I think that our noise inside our head is always so busy that we can't even hear our own good intentions. But to start with some practice that feels like, if it's 1 or 2 minutes a day, or you said, deliberately focusing on your breath as a start, that's awesome. And I also want to mention, because you were talking about like how hard it is or almost impossible to stare at a flower and not have your mind wander, where I think many people get it wrong is they think that the goal of meditation is to just have silence. I can't silence my brain. The actual benefits from meditation come from noticing that your mind has shifted and bringing it back to whatever you're focusing on. It's the flower, it's the breath, it's whatever your object of attention is. And that leaving like, oh, I'm thinking about what I need at Trader Joe's, oh no, I'm focusing on my breath. That's the bicep curl that really strengthens our attention. And there's so many incredible benefits. And I will tell you that the advisors that I've worked with, and I'm sure that you would have a similar story with your clients that have started a meditation practice, say it's a game changer. It's a game
Most
changer in every
definitely.
part of their life. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, even taking it to this super tangible, practical level, when we become good at what you were describing of moving the mind back and forth like a well-trained horse, all of a sudden, when a client calls and there's a problem or the market is going down and the phones start to ring, you're going to have a very different personal experience in those moments because you're going to be able to move the mind away from fight and flight or whatever your pattern might be into eustress. And from that place of eustress, as everyone knows, and I'm sure very experienced advisors are pros at this, but there's a difference between willpower, I am going to do this, versus I truly know everything is fine and I'm going to approach it from that place. And so mindfulness helps with those sorts of things.
Yeah, and that really would build those client relationships in those difficult times because they're not calling for you to be as freaked out as they are, right? There's something that I've been doing some writing on, which is the fear pheromone, so that when we're in fear, we send out like it's like they can, you know how they say like I don't know, animals can smell your fear on you. We actually people can too, in that it impacts them. It's contagious, just like happiness is contagious, but fear is, and that's so logical, right? We see it with just the news and how worked up we can all get about, I mean, everything these days. But your clients don't want that from you, right? They mostly want to have you make them feel better about their situation. Because as you mentioned earlier, money is so stressful for people.
It really is. And I will say, understanding myself and seeing where I was really good at helping people and also where I wasn't as strong was part of even my decision to leave the financial advising practice and focus more on how people can make money and how people can use mindfulness practices and mindset in their business. But it's funny because I think I have a fear chip that's stronger than a lot of other people. And it was hard for me to be a financial advisor with that chip. It just was like a realization of, this might not be the best place for me to be long term.
That's interesting. And so self-aware to realize versus like, oh, I just don't like this, that you could serve better in a different, being on the other side of the table or serving in a different way. I love this conversation. I love that we talked about intention and mindfulness and really brought it down to a practical level for advisors about how this really is something that can change everything in their business, not only with their clients, as we've been talking about, but clearly with their team. And so that when you go home at the end of the day, or when you leave the room that you're in to be with your family now, at the end of the day, that you're not taking any frustrations out on them and that those relationships get built stronger. Leisa, if people want to connect with you and learn more about your programs, get your book, what's a good place for them to go?
So the next best place would be to go to wealthclinic.com. And that is where you'll find more about my podcasts and my blog and my programs. And the Mindful Millionaire book is also a great place too. It was written from that perspective of being in the advisory relationship and then realizing that I wanted to make some changes and how can we be more mindful about our relationship with money.
Yeah. So, and I'd encourage you all, go get Lisa's book. Like I have a whole bookshelf of these, yes, you have your technical books, but really these about how to think about your own business. And these are tools that you can then share with your clients as well. So the Mindful Millionaire, great. And thank you, Leisa. I'm so thrilled to have had you on the show and I'm really grateful for all the great information that you've shared with us today.
Thank you. It's been so fun. I love talking about this stuff. I think we could just talk for hours.
Yeah, and we will again. So, and for all of you out there, thank you for being here, watching and listening to us. Again, my name is Ellen Rogin. You can find out more about me at ellenrogin.com. And if you go to ellenrogin.com/horse's mouth, I have a special report for you that's on what clients crave, but there's also all sorts of great mindfulness resources there for you. So books and apps. Lisa's book isn't listed there yet, but we can add it to the list. And thank you for being here. And my question to you is, how big of a positive impact are you willing to make? Remember to be great and create great.